and it's a lot going on, and I want to ignore certain stuff, but certain stuff I just can't. I'm having a couple health issues. So mad I don't have a Cash App anymore.
It's dark without that Cash App, ain't it?
Oh my God. Life's so different. My body different, you know? And I didn't do nothing. It's like the way I was bullied at my other job was so up because I really didn't do nothing. Like, I didn't risk that joint. I ain't play with that joint, none of that.
Thought you did.
You know what I thought about? I ain't even going. You mean? Boop, bop, 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 bop. Psych.
Hey everybody, hope y'all are doing good today, because listen, this episode might get a little speculation heavy. Based on a few things I've been noticing, I kept checking Mona's page here and there, and strangely, she hadn't uploaded anything to her own YouTube channel until today. And hold up, the timing is interesting because she dropped her podcast episode the exact same day Joe's podcast hits the internet. Now look, I'm not some hardcore Mona watcher, so maybe Wednesday is normally her upload day, and if that's the case, forgive me, but right at the beginning of the episode, from the clip I grabbed, something immediately felt off. I've been paying attention to Mona's mannerisms for a while now, so seeing her move the way she was moving on that show honestly felt weird. The first thing she said was that it had to do with a health issue, and let me be clear, when it comes to somebody's health, you will never hear me making jokes about that, so I'm not about to start guessing what the issue is the way ACT did. Lord, because ACT has been going absolutely wild about the whole JBP crew, and trust me, I'm definitely cooking up a separate video about what he said regarding Mark. But anyway, he went completely overboard when talking about Mona's health situation. I'm not touching that part, but what I will talk about is the next thing she said. According to Mona, she was getting bullied over there. She basically said it wasn't her fault and that she was being treated badly at the job. And notice this, she didn't even say last job. She specifically called it her other job. Then it looked like she was about to explain more, but suddenly she stopped herself mid-thought. That's when Phelps jumped in, and the moment he spoke is what really got my mind spinning. Like, hold on, are we seeing this right? Because if things went the way she expected, she probably wouldn't be moving like this. So now the question floating around is simple. Did Mona actually get let go for real? Especially since Joe didn't mention her name once during the episode and instead had V-Dot and Imani sitting on the main couch. And right at the end, he even hinted that B-Dot might be back next week. Why say next week instead of simply saying next pod? And did you notice how he made a point to shout out Flip specifically? And look at that, Flip is already right back in the mix. It's gotten to the point where Flip even scrapped that streaming platform idea he was trying to launch with Ian Dunlap. Meanwhile, I'm seeing my guy Ian popping up on other people's shows trying to keep things moving.
So now the big question is what actually happened with Flip? And it's very telling when you hear Flip saying, "I'm not trying to go back to the projects." Go back and watch that first video that y'all been running up like crazy, by the way, and I appreciate all the support. At the end of that video, I mentioned something, and a few people in the comments started saying he might have been talking about Mona. And when you look at how she was acting on her own show, it starts making you think. Now listen, I don't play around with people's health situations, and I definitely don't sit here diagnosing drug issues. But if you caught what I just said and you watched today's episode with Don't Call Me White Girl, you can start connecting the dots yourself. Because something clearly went down. Something clearly went down behind the scenes, and when you look at how Joe handled the situation with Melissa, it makes you wonder. And I'm not saying Joe kicked her off the podcast or anything like that, but once she stepped away from the pod, they basically stopped mentioning her altogether. Sure, they crack jokes here and there, but they never really address what happened. And there are still fans out there trying to figure out what the hell actually went down with Melissa. So the real question now is, are we about to see that same situation happen again? Because this upcoming Saturday's episode might end up being the most important episode of Mona's entire career. Seriously, the most important episode of her life. And the reason I say that is because I'm paying attention to what's happening behind the scenes with her situation involving Breakbeat Media, especially when it comes to whether she's trying to go fully independent. When I scroll through your YouTube channel and suddenly see a production company listed there talking about what they've been doing behind the scenes, it makes me pause for a second. Like, wait a minute. Damn, so you stepped away from Breakbeat Media, the same company that actually had a working structure and helped elevate your platform in ways you hadn't reached before. Because let's not forget, you said yourself that you previously had a podcast that didn't really gain traction. Then you linked up with Breakbeat Media and your platform started booming, and now suddenly the narrative shifts and it's like they're the problem. So when I see a name like Rebel Hill Productions or whatever that company is called showing up on your page, I'm not gonna lie, it raises some serious questions for me. Honestly, it starts raising red flags when someone who normally has a pretty consistent upload schedule suddenly breaks that rhythm on their own channel. And then they returned running, talking about health scares and situations happening at their other job. Mona, for your sake, I genuinely hope this whole situation ends up being nothing serious. I really hope it's just speculation blowing up online. From the outside looking in, it feels like you want the title of being independent without actually wanting to move like someone independent.
See, being independent means putting real work into your own platform. It means taking the time to invest in yourself and your production. It means learning the editing process, understanding marketing, and building things from the ground up. But from what we're seeing, it doesn't look like that's the route you want to take. Now, don't get me wrong, you do have a name out here. You've gone viral multiple times and you remind people of that often. I even watched that interview you did with Danny, and let's be honest, he was definitely pressing you a bit during that conversation. And part of the reason was the situation with you showing up 2.5 hours late. Because during that interview, you basically said you didn't care about being late since that's just who you are. You also said Breakbeat didn't really do anything for you and that you were the one bringing value to them. But when people hear that, the first thing that comes to mind is accountability. At the same time, you're saying you should be independent and people should be supporting you. But questions are floating around about why you don't have access to your Cash App anymore. There are questions about why you're late almost everywhere you go, and there are questions about why it sometimes looks like other people's time isn't being respected. Sure, you can absolutely do everything on your own if that's the path you choose, but independence usually means building the infrastructure yourself instead of expecting everything to already be set up for you. And if we're being real, a lot of what people judge comes from how you present yourself on the Joe Budden podcast. Because for a long time, the message coming from you has sounded like the show isn't adapting to your style, like they're not doing what you want them to do, like they're not following your lead. But the thing is, you joined their platform, they didn't join yours. And I'm saying all of this as someone who actually tried to shift my perspective and give you the benefit of the doubt. I really did. But at this point, all we can do is wait and see how this plays out. So let's just hope this episode ends up being heavy on speculation and light on reality. I want all of you to go watch that episode for yourselves. And then on Saturday, we're going to see together whether Mona shows up on the Joe Budden podcast or not. Either way, I want to hear what you think about all of this. Drop your thoughts down in the comments and let's talk about it. And if you enjoyed the breakdown, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel for more.